Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of the Science of Soul podcast. This week we're talking about fasting. We're talking about fasting in a Muslim context, Islamic fasting, what that means. We're talking about Ramadan. Ramadan is coming as of this recording, but depends when you're listening to it. It could be already here, or maybe you're listening to this because you want to include a daily regimen of fasting in your life. However it is, please enjoy, share it with your family and friends, and as ever, leave us a review, subscribe if you're on Google, Apple, or on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast, give us a review, give us a like, and yeah, it'll help us grow the podcast and get more listeners. So enjoy.
Wagwan.
Assalamu alaikum. What's going on? You know what? I keep saying don't talk about coronavirus,
No,
but I
and you
think
started-
no. But do you know what it is? I'm just gonna nip it in the bud now. For you, it's gonna be very difficult.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
eventually maybe.
Yeah.
I think my emotions is just, yeah.
All right. Well, I wanted this conversation to be a little bit more upbeat.
Let's do something different, huh?
Yeah, a little bit uplifting. I mean, it is very difficult to not acknowledge what's part of our daily context now.
Yeah, we'll get a sneaky bit of COVID in here and there.
Cheeky bit of COVID.
Why not?
Yeah. We got a guest today.
Wagwan.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, man. This is this doppelganger of mine is if you can believe, if you're watching this on YouTube, 10 years my senior, man.
Senior.
Oh my god, yeah, no, 10 years my junior. Yeah,
Oh man.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they do live together, so there is some
That's-
social
that's why-
isolating.
that's why
So
we're
a bit
sat
of
together.
COVID,
Yeah.
a bit of COVID in
That's
here.
why we're sat together and you're sat over there.
The quarantined,
Yeah, but look how comfortable you are.
my quarantined space.
You look so comfortable right now. So, yeah, today we are talking about fasting and everything that entails. Ramadan is, as
3
of
weeks away, huh?
yeah, as of this recording, it's approximately 3 weeks or just over 3 weeks away.
Mm.
So very close. And we actually wanted to do a number of videos on fasting for a while now, for ages. Like we've got all this backlog of
Yeah,
research that
yeah.
we've been doing and stuff. So it's interesting. Like for me, the thing that I think in light of everything that's happening around the world right now, that I would think is an interesting aspect of fasting,
Mm.
not necessarily specifically Ramadan,
Yeah.
but fasting itself, the act of abstaining from food, abstaining from water if it's in a Muslim with a Muslim protocol,
Mm.
is that it can be incredibly therapeutic and rejuvenating for the body,
Mm. Mm.
which I think I am not saying it is a cure for any kind of viral infection, but what's cool about it is that is something that ancient peoples have done as a means of wellness, physical wellness, spiritual wellness, and mental wellness. So I feel like with Ramadan coming,
Mm.
it's actually at such, even though there's an element of like, oh man, Ramadan came at such a horrible time because of look what's happening around the world, but
I think it's a good time.
it's a good time, isn't
It's a
it?
good time.
Yeah.
With the quarantine, with
Yeah.
with all this stockpiling, I knew that I didn't need to stockpile because I'll be fasting.
Yeah. So yeah, like why do you reckon it's a good time for Ramadan?
I think that first thing, stockpiling, and I've noticed like, a lot of people have, through I guess desperation, through fear, have kind of turned their attention to God. And I think that's obviously because a lot of us, meaning Muslims, it's obvious, it's at the back of our mind, and I feel like it's come to the forefront of our mind. I think it's partially probably because we don't have a cure for the virus, and everyone's kind of hopeless, and the only hope that people can find, or Muslims can find, is in Allah.
Yeah. So it's like a reset for people,
Yeah, I think so. Maybe.
like
Maybe.
switching off from
I think it's
everything.
desperation. And look, I think it's sad. I think it's desperation. I think it's fear and desperation. But whatever works, if it's going to bring you closer to God, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing for sure about, I mean, we want to talk about fasting, but with Ramadan coming up, one of the things about Ramadan that I think appeals to me so much, and everyone, of course,
Mm.
is how it allows you to dematerialize.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
create some kind of distance from things that are ultimately part of the dunya, in the sense of part of the material world.
Yeah.
Like you don't eat,
Yeah.
you don't drink. These are things that you need to survive in a material world,
Mm.
in to look after your physiology.
Yeah.
But instead you nourish your spiritual self,
Yeah.
with remembrance of God and reconnecting to Him through His scriptures and stuff like that. So yeah, man, I think it is actually the perfect time for that. It's the perfect time to do some soul searching and
Mm.
to reflect on, all the things that we've done this past year that have kind of led us to this moment, both in the context of like now that we've made it to Ramadan, if inshallah we do make it to Ramadan, or in the context of like, oh my God, look at this crazy thing that's happening around the world that's fallen on us now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what are you looking forward to, Ramadan?
I don't know. Usually for me, like Ramadan is more about Tarawih than fasting because I'm used to the fasting anyway.
Yeah.
So
Why is that?
because we do a lot of fasting like outside Ramadan,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not the fasting that I find difficult. It's more Tarawih because there's this that stress like around iftar time. But then this year, if there's no Tarawih, then
Yeah. Chilling.
it will just be like just
Look
not
how happy he
eating,
is.
just being at home. That's it.
You're going to do Tarawih at home, mate.
Yeah, and
The whole juz.
I'll do what I can at home. But yeah, it's weird because I feel like with the virus coming at the same time as Ramadan, even for people who don't do much Ramadan, they might realize how much of a difference Ramadan makes in their year because it sort of resets you every year.
Yeah.
But this year, if you don't really get the opportunity, in a weird way, you might come to like appreciate the month more, not being able to like fully do what you would do in normal years.
Yeah, you're forced to do Ramadan because otherwise you might be at work or you might be
Yeah.
just chilling and partying, but you can't do that now because it's illegal,
Mm.
with the lockdown. The lockdown has made clubbing and stuff illegal. That's mad.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Subhanallah. Yeah,
A
so
lot of people are going to be healthy after this.
yes. Now
No,
on
actually,
on
no.
well, no.
Off-
On that point, let me just use that as a chapter, like
Okay.
for what's going to come now. That's an interesting point. Why do you think people are going to be healthy after this?
Well, I was going to say because they're not drinking as much, but then I remembered that the off licenses have become necessities.
Really?
Yeah, they're necessary. Businesses that are necessary to stay
I thought it was
open.
only supermarkets.
It's off licenses as well.
Okay.
And a
And
lot
they've,
of pubs are like delivering alcohol.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe the drugs will calm down. I don't know. Well, actually, you know what? I saw a drug dealer driving around the other day with a mask on his chin.
Delivery service.
He's
Like a hands-off, contact-free
he's-
delivery service for drugs.
He's completely lost the. I don't know what he's been reading, but
Yeah.
it goes through your chin, covering your chin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it is a good time to become healthy, and there's a lot of you see out there's a lot of recommendations of the things that you can do while you're in quarantine, improve yourself. And whether you're Muslim or not, I think that's one thing that you could really do. Join us in Ramadan and fast during that period. Firstly, your stockpile will stay high. Secondly, you can improve yourself in ways that you can't really imagine. And if you do that effectively, I guess it goes to the Muslims as well. If we have that mindset as opposed to, I'm just going to fast, I'm going to just abstain from food and drink, and then I'm going to stuff myself at iftar, kind of defeats well, it doesn't defeat the point, but it kind of doesn't elevate you to the level that fasting could potentially elevate you to. In terms of, okay, you know what, I'm actually going to really think about this. and understand that understand my own abilities, if that makes sense. Understand the fact that why I'm fasting. What is that? And then it gets you thinking. It gets you thinking to you can sit there and you can think about existence and things beyond you. I remember. I mean, that is. I think me and you. I remember a few years back, probably 5 or 6 years.
So, that is an excellent demonstration of how you should be coughing right now. That microphone there is just crapping itself. It's got coronavirus.
It's just full of corona. I remember that we used to come out for Ramadan. I mean Tarawih. I'm not saying that we're saints or saying anything like that, but it was an amazing feeling that we used to come out, and it was hotter at that time, so it was midsummer, and the stars used to be out, and it just used to feel a bit.
You want to say magical? I knew you wanted to say magical, but
I was thinking of another word to say without Sheen.
But you had no other word.
I had no other word.
Yeah.
And I think it's about that. I think it's important that we think about, and what you were saying, abstaining from the bare necessities of life. It kind of takes us to this. It takes us away from this world, from this earth. But I think one needs to actually actively take themselves away from this earth through this process. If this process is just overtaking you and it can overtake you, and just all you experience is hunger and thirst and temptation, then really you're just going to be consumed by the negative impact of fasting, because there is a negative impact of fasting, and that is that.
Well, in that case, then, can you talk us through the different protocols of a Muslim fast, what it looks like, and then we'll break down some of the amazing things about it. But can you just, from beginning to end?
I guess that's because there's so many types of fasting out there.
Yeah.
So this is. So we're not eating during daylight times. I guess everyone's had this spiel, but haven't they? And we do it so many times at work and etc. From dawn or really early dawn to sunset, we're not eating, we're not drinking, we're abstaining from bad behavior. We're abstaining from any desire fulfilling behavior, whether that's sexual intercourse with one's wife, or pleasures in any other form. So we kind of
wait. What do you mean other form?
Why did you have to ask me that?
Why you
I don't
say
want
it?
to go into
You said it.
What?
You said it. You can't just leave people hang. What the heck does that mean? Okay. Anyway, swiftly moving on.
I mean, you just have to watch that movie. The other day, I watched the movie Dictator. It's such a messed up movie.
The Sacha Baron Cohen one. The Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's just watch that. Actually, no, don't watch that. But there's a scene in there that is talking about what I'm talking about.
Oh, I see. Okay, fine. Okay, if Sacha Baron Cohen's talking about, I can probably tell what you're talking about. So you don't. Yeah, you don't.
Okay, so abstaining. And kind of, being minimal in everything, I guess, in everything that we're doing, that we do, limit the wasting that we do, limit the amount of time we spend in bed, really being active and thinking about, and then looking at the other side of it, thinking about our spirituality, how connected we are with God, etc. So that is the Islamic fasting.
Islamic fast, yeah. That sound about right?
Protocol.
Anything missing?
Wouldn't say so. Wouldn't say so.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, I think it's really good that you mentioned the thing about the behaviors.
Yeah.
Those things, because one thing in preparation for this conversation, I was really just focused on the physiological effects of abstaining from food and drink.
Yeah.
But that is such an important part of fasting in a Muslim context, and with Ramadan as well. One thing I came across, completely not even related to the research for this conversation, but it's just somehow sparked in my mind, is about how it was to do with coronavirus actually.
Mm-hmm.
So someone was giving advice on not consuming too much media around coronavirus because it's going to fuel fears and anxiety and stuff like that. And what they referenced in general was a few studies where basically people who
Sneak a bit of COVID in here.
yes, a cheeky bit of COVID just stuck in there. When people, I mean, you did, both of you guys did psychology, so you can step in. But when people were surrounding themselves with a certain set of information constantly, certain stimulus on a regular basis, then it was kind of almost conditioning them to behave in a certain way. So whether it was being surrounded by people who swear all the time, or whether it was people who smoke all the time, or whether it's watching 24-hour news cycles and it was like driving up their anxiety levels, when they are advised to like distance themselves from that, they can almost reset and rewire their brain to start thinking in a different way and start behaving in a different way. So what's cool about that in relation to this is that when you consciously start trying to avoid certain things in your day-to-day life, then it's kind of like 30, I mean, in the case of Ramadan, it's 29 or 30 days of training for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
That if you stop swearing, say swearing is like one of your vices, and you're like, okay, it's Ramadan now, and this is something that's not allowed in Ramadan whilst I'm fasting, or talking bad about someone behind their back. These things are like problems that I have. If I choose to consciously stop this behavior for these 30 days, it's very likely to habituate.
Yeah.
So that's so cool, you know.
It always feels weird to like eat after Ramadan, isn't it?
Yeah, because you're like conditioned to not eat in the day. So that's actually a perfect example.
And you think that you're gonna eat tons, but you can't. You know, you eat one samosa.
Yeah, even on Eid.
Yeah.
You don't feel like eating that much. Yeah, that's actually a good point. I completely
and then
forgot about that.
every time you eat, you just feel tired. Like that is how I am.
Food coma.
And then after about 10 minutes, I get hungry again, and then I can have another half a samosa.
Oh man,
You're not in that place, are you?
No, I can gorge.
You can gorge.
I don't know. Somehow that's like
I remember when we were in Jerusalem. That was my entertainment.
watching me gorge
I used to
at iftar time.
You know what I used to do? I used to force. I used to give him more food
He used to
because
pump
it
me.
was just hilarious. He couldn't walk afterwards.
No, but you remember it was like a buffet. You could get what you want.
Yeah.
And so I'd get stuff, and I'd be like, oh, I don't know if I want this, and then he'd be like, yeah, just get it. And
But that was
part
your
of-
kind of food, though, wasn't it? The kind of stuff that they were.
yeah, I
serving.
like that kind of stuff. But he'd say that because it was for his. He was basically just preparing to sit down and watch me eat whilst he ate, and it be his entertainment. So, but then on some level, I'm telling you, I knew that, but I still
you
did.
didn't care. You
I
didn't
didn't
care because the pleasures that you were getting were
It overrid the embarrassment. And then I'd be in pain
and
afterwards.
the pain. Yeah.
Afterwards, I knew the pain was coming.
But you didn't care.
Yeah, I just like to eat, man. I just enjoy eating.
But to be honest, I think you didn't eat that much. It wasn't that much. I think it's because you had been fasting all day and your stomach had shrunk, and then you've suddenly eaten, and you would just eat more than your stomach can hold at that moment.
Okay, can you talk about that? So what's going on there? Like, does when people say your stomach shrinks when you fast, is that literally what's happening? And
Yeah, well,
that's
your
really
stomach
interesting.
can hold quite a lot of content. You know,
It's like a sack, right? Or
Yeah, it's a sack, and it can expand, and if it's not working, it will just shrivel down. And with anything in the body, if you like fill things up very quickly, then they're not going to just give way. It's not like a
balloon or
flimsy thing. It's quite, it's got response as well.
Yeah.
So it shrinks down, and when you eat, and we've noticed that in iftar time, right? We can't eat as much as we thought we can eat, and in fact, we probably can't eat the amount that we would normally eat in our normal day-to-day meal life and meals, and it won't give way, if that makes sense. So it will just stay there, and it will expand in a certain manner. And then obviously you will see beer guts and stuff like that, and the stomach can get quite big. Not that big, but it can get quite big. So in that way, it's quite good, because it takes it down. You get you get full quite quickly. You know, if you carry on with that, it's amazing.
Yeah. Have you seen how, with people who do like like 10-day water fasts, or those longer extreme fasts where there's no food for very, very long periods,
Yeah.
and the calories are either like no calories or very, very minimal calories per day, and when they start eating normal food again, they have to because they can actually really hurt themselves by just eating normal food again, they have to slowly reintroduce certain foods over a period of time. They can't just start eating again.
It can actually kill you. It's called refeeding syndrome.
Wow.
So you get massive imbalance of your electrolytes, and when that's something that we're very careful with when we are, for example, people who are suffering from anorexia and they're starving themselves. When we are, or people who are they're not nourished properly, nourished. When we refeed them, we're very careful about how we do it, and we're constantly monitoring their the phosphate levels, because that can become quite unusual, magnesiums and stuff like that.
So when we fast in again in that Muslim context, the Muslim Islamic style of fasting, the Prophet ﷺ said to eat dates to break your fast, right? Like, can you speak to that? Like, can you talk about?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I haven't. So twice now, I've been asked to do some research into the science of fasting, and there's so much out there that you can just sit there forever almost and go through this and find it amazing. And a lot of studies, there's very interesting studies out there. There's one or two of them, and they're not really backed up with a huge amount of research, which is nice, but it's not, a diligent scientist wouldn't say, oh yeah, this is concrete or anything. But I guess research is like that. Nothing is concrete.
Sure.
But with the dates thing, I can't talk to you about what's happening, what the physiology and etc. is. But it's full of sugars. It's so that's probably the main thing. It's a calorie-rich fruit, or it's a fruit, isn't it?
It's got seed, yeah.
Yeah. So breaking your fast with that, I would think, especially in the Middle East where it's hot, it's barren, etc. It was probably the perfect thing to break a fast with.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other nutrients in dates. So the other Jesus and Mary, when Mary gave birth to Jesus, Jesus spoke to Mary and said, shake the tree, and dates fell, and eat, and he told her to eat the dates. And some people now say it's a very good thing to have after labor.
Yeah. I got a story about that.
Yeah, go on.
So, when my firstborn was born, Sophia.
Yeah.
So, I was in full like that Islamic militant mode of just making sure everything.
You had a really long beard.
I had a massive long beard. I was like making sure all the steps that's supposed to happen, that are in any books or are told about childbirth or whatever, I'm gonna make sure I do. So I took for your baby, I took some dates. And when you're going through all this process of labor, and your emotions are in flux and things are changing in your body and your tastes change and everything, I did my level best to.
Did you eat all the dates before you got
No, I didn't eat the dates, but I was insisting. Imagine my wife smashed after giving birth. She's really tired, yeah. She's like, she's not even fully conscious. I'm like, you need to eat this. Okay, Mary ate it. You need to eat it. And I think she took one bite and she just couldn't get it down, the rest of it. So I was like, I was really annoyed about that.
This is why you should have went for the milk and dates. Remember, I remember for years, Zishan, right? These guys used to take, they used to take the Michael out of me. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I wanted don't laugh. I wanted to say it in an appropriate way, right?
Yeah.
About soaking dates in milk and drinking it in the morning, right? Because when I was in boarding school, everyone was like, it gives you strength. Yeah, man, it gives you... Anyway, I used to tell Jubair this, innit? And they used to mock me about it. Eventually, M&S start doing it. Isn't that right, Jubair?
Yeah, their one is really nice though.
But still, I mean,
I
what do
don't
you
know
feel?
why.
What
It's
is
just
it?
so basically
Dates.
it's just a shake,
Oh, just
a milkshake,
date
but with
milkshake.
date milkshake. But when he used to say it, it used to sound really horrible. Like the thought of soaking dates in milk. I just used to think of soggy dates. That's
Yeah,
what
it's actually soggy dates, but the milk is amazing.
I'm
It
sure the
tastes
milk is
so good.
amazing, but you didn't sell it to me. I think okay, that's the problem. You didn't sell it to me.
Yeah, because you're just a man, bruv. You just need to drink it, innit? Man,
No,
I
it
mean,
sounds horrible. You know, anything with milk just makes me feel a bit.
you're just a
gaggy.
pansy, actually.
No,
You're a pansy, bruv.
I gag at the thought of
That's a pansy.
a
A
lot of
pansy only gags, bruv.
no, and I'm telling you now, there's a lot of research that shows that human beings are not supposed to drink milk as well.
They're not supposed to drink milk.
Yeah, it's just
Why aren't we supposed to drink milk?
because it's disgusting. It comes from the booby of a cow.
I think we've kind of lost.
Sorry, yeah,
Let's go back
you
to
derailed, or maybe I derailed
dates.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I usually have 3 dates. I even have dates during suhoor. So I have 3 dates.
Okay, yeah.
And it's actually quite good because it keeps me. Maybe it's in my head. I don't know. But it keeps me like full for that morning. And usually, you know, when you wake up in the morning and if you haven't eaten anything, you feel sick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I have the dates, I don't have that feeling. Whereas if I have other things, and it's weird because date is full of sugars and it's fast releasing sugars as well, I think. When I eat something else, which is, you know, again, fast releasing, I'll have that sickness in the morning.
Okay.
But for
But you
some
don't get
reason,
it
I
with
don't
dates?
have it with dates.
Okay.
Don't you ever feel hungrier if you do have sehri than if you don't?
Yeah, I feel hungry. Yeah. If I have a full-on meal for Sahri. Like,
Maybe that's the key, is to like not eat too much for sehri.
no, I think so, that's right.
Yeah.
Eat minimum amount, and whatever you're eating, it just needs to be a bit wholesome.
Yeah. But there is blessing in eating sehri.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah,
Prophet
yeah.
ﷺ said, there's blessing in it. And so even if you can have a drink of water
Yeah.
as your suhoor, to have that, I think that's the way forward for me, just the water.
Yeah.
Because like you, if I
Yeah.
eat something, like you said, I just feel like I feel tired in the morning. I feel a bit sick in the morning. I feel a bit like hungrier as well
Yeah.
throughout the day. I find I feel better
When you're not eating.
when I'm lighter. Yeah, when I'm not eating.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your things that you like eating for iftar and?
Everything fried and
Fried.
but then
Did you
if
say fried?
yeah, if I'm doing tarawih, then I can't really eat much
Okay.
because I start burping and stuff when I'm eating. So for the last few years, I've just been having like a little bit and having more as soon as I come back from tarawih,
Okay.
and I'll just have whatever's at home.
Okay.
I
So name some
haven't really
items then.
I haven't really been that picky about it. Just anything.
Okay. What
Like
about you?
dal
Abdul?
boras and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, proper fried stuff, Bengali fried stuff. What about you?
Yeah, fried stuff is quite good, isn't it?
I think it's satisfying.
I think it's because we've grown up with it.
So there's the nostalgia with it as well.
Yeah, and kisuri, like, you know, that
There's something to be said about kisuri. I
kisuri
think.
is mad, bruv.
Yeah.
Kisuri is sick. It has everything. You know, it's got,
So I actually looked into kisuri in terms of its
and so many civilizations have it.
that's exactly
in
what I was going to
different
say.
forms.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh,
that
sorry,
it
bro. I
no,
took
no,
your
but
thunder.
that's the interesting point, is that it exists in so many different cultures.
Yeah.
You know, and in slightly different like variations. The fundamentals are there. That it's rice
Yeah.
boiled in.
It's actually Persian.
Is that the origin of
I
it?
think it's Persian. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was Chinese
Is it? I don't know.
because they have it. Yeah, they call it kongi.
Kongi.
Kongi, yeah. And then there's
How did kisuri
kedjuri,
come?
kedjuri,
Kejuri, yeah.
yeah, kichuri.
Kichuri is Persian. You know, the Persians.
Do you know what? I think you're right actually, because when I had kichuri in Bangladesh,
Yeah.
like as in kichuri, not kisuri,
Yeah.
kichuri, yeah.
It had meat in it? Did it have
It
meat
had
in
meat in it, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was
Persians.
like, hold on, this is not kisuri. And so the guys I was with, so I'm Silati, these guys who I was with, they're from Dhaka, they speak Shuddha, it's a different part of the country. And I was saying to them, hey, we have kisuri, but we don't, like, it doesn't look like this. And he said, yeah, it comes in all different.
We're
like,
talking
ways.
about kisuri, but no, I mean, probably everyone knows what kisuri is.
Okay, describe
but
it, yeah,
it's-
go on, describe it.
So it's all different in different houses as well in Bengalis. So our one is got lentils, it's got rice,
Yeah.
and it's got clarified butter in it.
So
So
it's
it's got
salty?
ghee in
There's
it.
salt in it?
It's got salt in it, and it's got turmeric,
Onions?
onions as well. Sorry.
Okay. And then what's the consistency of yours?
So it's quite thick.
Yours is thicker?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
So if you were to plate it up, you could almost cut it. Does that make sense?
Oh,
if you
yours
were
is quite dry.
Yeah, it's quite dry, but it's
okay.
still
Moist.
It's still moist. It's still moist, but like if you leave it there for, it will develop a skin, and if you leave it there for about an hour, it can't. You can just cut it, and it won't just. When does that make sense?
So basically, that's like ours on the second day.
Okay.
You know, the day after.
Yeah.
If you look at it in the pan, there's like clumps of it stuck to the side of the pan that has not even hit the bottom. Because it's dried out. But with ours, when it's fresh, it's more runny.
Okay.
It's still not like it's not soup.
Yeah.
But it's runny.
Yeah, I think the same with us. I think it's the drying part. When it dries, I think our one just dries a lot quicker.
Okay.
So my mum doesn't put that much water in it. She'll just use the water that has been used to kind of soften the rice.
So it's the same water, all just...
Yeah, well, soften the lentils. So, the water that is used to soften the lentils will be used for the whole dish.
Okay. Yeah, with our house, with kisuri, like mum uses it almost like a medicinal food as well.
Yeah, like when you're ill, huh?
Yeah, when you're ill,
it's
you
have kisuri. It's the
kisuri.
best thing to have when you're ill as well.
Why is that?
I think it's the taste, because it's salty. It's quite mild. It's bland. Well,
so the salt is good for your salts.
No, I think when your taste buds go all crazy. When you taste salt, it's like you know that's salt. It doesn't taste like anything else apart from salt.
Okay.
I think that's. I think it's that.
I think for fasting as well, it's probably awesome because it's just so easy on your stomach.
Yeah.
It's not like rice. Even just normal plain boiled rice is very easy to digest. So when it's like in that form, it's probably easier to digest.
Yeah. Well, imagine having curry and rice or biryani or something strong like that on an empty stomach, which is already probably starting to burn.
Yeah.
It's going to give you indigestion. You're going to be burping all over the place.
Yeah.
Talking about burps, bruv. Oh my God. Next, standing in Tarawih and when people are burping, oh.
It makes me...
Sometimes I feel like breaking my wudu. I'm like, not my wudu. breaking my prayer and going and doing wudu because...
It makes me feel a bit sick. I know you get proper annoyed about it.
Yeah.
Like, it proper annoys you.
Even if it's people, like, behind... Like, if they're far away, it's still... If not just next to me, it's just...
And they leave it to,
And they don't, like, blow it away or try to make it quiet. They're like, and it just slowly spreads, like, from their mouth. Yeah.
And they're so chuffed about it. They're moving around, like, in salah like that. They're just so happy that they just relieved themselves
from their mouth.
Revealed.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is relieving themselves through their mouth. Oh. It makes me just feel sick when I...
Like, I mean, that is...
But that's overeating though, right?
And it's stagnated air. Imagine that, right? All that air that has just been brewing in your stomach because you're fasting, and then you just gobble up all this food, and the food is on top now. The air is stuck underneath there. God knows what it's brewing underneath there, fermenting, etc.
It is fermenting, isn't it?
Exactly. And then the stomach moves around, and the air bubbles start coming up, and then boom, out the mouth.
Oh my God.
Nasty.
You know how people get fat shamed? We're like burp shaming people.
Burp shaming people, bruv.
Some people need to be burp shamed though.
Yeah.
They need to. You shouldn't be. Well,
but they deserve it though, because it's like in the mosque there's like etiquette. Yes. There's angels and stuff. You disturb them, and it's like religiously you're not supposed to be like acting like that in the mosque.
Yeah, but I think obviously it's a lot of the time it's the elders, isn't it? I never hear the youngsters burping. It's normally like
it's probably just years of having that diet at Ramadan.
Yeah,
but
I think
yeah.
And overeating.
Yeah. It's difficult. It's difficult, man. Because when you need to burp, what do? You just hold it and then...
You can let it out quietly and like blow it so that it doesn't affect
Is that what
anyone.
you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up, bro.
It's because you see it start coming back down. Oh, God. All right, so shall we start? Let's talk about some of the physiological benefits of fasting, yeah?
Okay, so I did promise that I'm going to do a bit of research into this, because of a little bit of cheeky COVID in here, because of all the COVID stuff. It has been really difficult for me to do research, and the last time I'd done research into this was a while back. This was when I was asked to do the presentation for those...
About 2 years ago?
Was it 2 years ago? Wow,
I think so, roughly,
that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got that brief. I mean, I was happy. It was nice. It's nice to speak about the scientific and physiological aspect of fasting. But I remember my presentation, half of it was actually full of the psychological and the spiritual aspect of fasting.
Sure.
And I think for Muslims, I think that's more important than anything else.
Yeah.
In recent history, there has been a massive explosion into fasting research, and there's so much stuff out there. And it's crazy because, it's ever changing. A lot of it is changing. There are the stuff that is like set in stone and etc. So with that, that study that you were talking about a few episodes back about how calorie restriction doesn't probably make a difference.
Oh yeah.
Weirdly enough, fasting research has shown that it does. There is not massive.
What's interesting about that? So that's true. You're right.
Yeah.
I think what the greater impact on that was the timings of the eating, as opposed to the number of calories.
Yeah.
But go on.
Yeah. You're probably right, and it reduced. So what it reduced is body fat.
Okay.
So it reduced the body fat, and that is what the research was showing.
Okay.
And so there's quite a few research out there. Again, it's not conclusive. Is kind of and it's obviously people react differently, and when people are fasting, there's so many different types of fasting. But this was when I was reading the study, this was more towards the fasting that we do. However, there are other studies that have specifically looked at Ramadan fasting, and they've shown the opposite. Yeah.
That you can gain weight.
You gain weight.
Okay.
And the conclusion was because people are overeating during iftar time and kind of defeat.
Yeah.
So this I think with those two research is the interesting that comes out from this is it the calorie, as you said, is it the calorie restriction, or is it the time period? I think it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a few research looking at Islamic fasting.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do gain weight.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's probably not just calorie restriction, it's probably the quality of the calories that we're consuming.
Yeah.
So, I think we came to that conclusion last time, like if you want to restrict your calories, you want to be eating good calories. Well, you don't restrict it to the amount that, it's probably more reduced. Don't overeat. Yeah. I think that's the message, isn't it? I think that is the message was the last episode. Do not overeat. So whereas I think what's happening in the Muslim community is that we're overeating in the window that we are able to eat.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, it would be really interesting to do some studies now where people have been fasting in the summer periods, and we have a smaller window of eating, whether people are still gaining weight.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if people are still gaining weight.
Yeah.
Because damn, we can stuff our faces, can't we?
Yeah. Well, so to clarify at one point is with the calorie restriction, what I was saying that I'd heard from like people like Peter Attia and stuff is that it's, of course, there is a mathematical, like physical notion that if you have a certain number of calories going in, if it's below a certain threshold and you're expending more than that in your activity, then of course you will lose weight. But they were talking, to go further into it, they were talking about personalized medicine and how certain physical makeups of people from certain parts of the world differ when eating certain foods and when doing certain exercises and stuff. So I completely agree that yes, of course, calorie restriction will definitely have an impact on getting rid of body fat and stuff, especially when if all your data is based around healthy eating as well. And
so these, I mean, as I said, I haven't researched, I haven't done tons of research, but there were very small studies. So again, I'm saying they're inconclusive. They're not conclusive, but the population, the target population was quite small. The participants that they used were, they probably weren't representative. But it's an interesting thing that it showed.
Yeah.
There are other studies that have also shown that your body becomes the insulin, in terms of insulin resistance, you become more insulin sensitive.
Okay.
During that period. I can't quite explain to you the physiological changes that happen, because I've forgotten. I can't remember every single.
Sure.
But that's very interesting, because it's a for especially within the Asian community and the Afro-Caribbean community, where there is a higher prevalence of diabetes. The question is, where's the balance? A lot of doctors will recommend against diabetics fasting, which is it's reasonable. We spoke about ketoacidosis, which is a life-threatening condition that you can develop if you're diabetic, but maybe not all diabetics develop that. But again, that is something that the research has shown. There are safe ways of fasting for diabetics. My mum's diabetic, and she fasts.
Yeah.
It's probably dangerous, but I guess it's very important to know.
So why would it be dangerous? Can you explain the mechanism for why it would be dangerous?
So you can, especially if your sugar levels can become deranged during those periods. And depending on what medications you are on, it can become really dangerous. If you're on insulin, the timing of the medications, and then you get these massive changes in your blood sugars, where for a very long time you're not eating anything, and etc.
So what does that mean? When your blood sugar changes, why is that dangerous?
So just say, I mean, a diabetic, we have to know that, we have to understand. So this is the interesting thing to look into. That your insulin, a diabetic is insulin resistant. So even if you pump insulin into a person, they may not react as well as they should.
Pretend I don't know anything of what you're talking about. Like, what is insulin? Why does a person need insulin?
Oh my god, we need another episode for this.
No, in a nutshell.
Okay, so whatever we eat, if carbohydrates, an energy source other than protein and fat. Well, fat is protein and fat, bread, rice, etc. It's all broken down into simple sugars, which is processed by the body. So the first place that the sugar goes through is the stomach, then the liver, and then the bloodstream, and then the liver. And what can happen is, sugar within the bloodstream is a bad thing. Yeah, you don't want it within the bloodstream. You want it in smaller dosage, going to correct places.
Yeah.
Yep. A delivery system that is delivering sugars to certain places. But if you just have excess sugars within your body, it can cause damage to organs such as your kidneys, your eyes, cause erectile dysfunction, your heart, your veins, your nerves, and people can suffer from complications because of this.
So sugar in the blood is bad?
Is bad, yeah. To control the sugar in your blood, you have a hormone called insulin. It's produced by the pancreas, which sits there, and that goes and acts on liver cells, and it acts on muscle cells, and it kind of opens up gates so that the sugar can get in. So what happens in diabetics is, over time, your pancreas, the organ that is producing the insulin, can become numb to sugars because it's just been bombarded by sugars. It just can't work well enough to produce insulin in response to it, because that is what the liver pancreas does. In response to sugar, it will release it. It won't just release it for no reason.
Yeah.
Or you become resistant to insulin. So even though you have insulin in the system, it just isn't working effectively to allow the sugars to get into the muscles where it's safe, into the liver where it's safe, where it can be stored. Yeah. So that is, in a nutshell, that is what type 2 diabetes is. Sure. Type 1 is a bit different, and it's more of an autoimmune problem, where your own immune cells destroy the cells that are producing insulin in the pancreas. So one of the complications, one of the negatives that you can have with diabetics is that they're starving for a very long time. They start producing ketones and then they start eating, and their body just doesn't respond quick enough to take that sugar in. It doesn't, and it carries on producing ketones. That's one thing that can lead to a diabetic patient having ketoacidosis.
Okay.
The other ones, depending on what medications you're on, it can cause hypoglycemia, which is again a life-threatening condition if you don't treat it. So their sugar levels just plummet, and fasting will just exacerbate that.
Yeah.
So that is why, and there's so many other reasons. Again, depending on if you're on insulin, it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
To be fasted. If someone is fasting, go and speak to your GP, and and if you want to carry on fasting, really probe the idea with your GP. Have a good conversation about fasting. There is advice out there about diabetes and fasting. Sometimes there is safe ways of doing it.
Okay. So I think the key takeaway from all of that is to make sure that for your own individual circumstances, you're making sure you speak to the right people who know what they're talking about, what your physiological situation is, and then act accordingly, because Islamically there are concessions for people who
and you have to be responsible. If you have a medical problem, you need to be responsible. And the other thing is, insulin sensitivity is a great thing. For people who aren't diabetic, it's actually a really good thing. It increases your insulin sensitivity.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That was interesting about some of the stuff that I'd read about intermittent fasting and also time restricted eating. So there's a doctor called Dr. Sachin Panda, which I mentioned to you before in that last conversation, where he conducted some experiments with mice where they'd restricted the time of when these mice could eat, and also what these mice were eating as well. They were like on a certain diet. Now, mice that had basically were basically pre-diabetic, when they were taken onto like a healthy diet and only eating at a certain time, they were able to completely reverse the effects.
I've heard that.
Yeah, so I think those things apply more to people who type 1 and type 1, right? Type 2, sorry, as opposed to type 1, and also people who aren't on like lifelong medications and things like that.
Yeah, and again, being very careful, because there are studies out there that people can reverse diabetes. But in in a very extreme way. I'm not going to say how. Because I don't want people
following it.
But there are ways. Studies have shown, but it's very extreme, and it could potentially be. The implications could be quite severe and potentially.
And then to come back to the point that you made earlier about how studies had shown that people who were following Muslim fasting had gained weight. I think that actually links a lot to the studies that Dr. Sachin Panda had done. So he'd restricted the eating window for these mice to a period that was in their normal eating window. So they're nocturnal. And so he restricted it to a certain period in the night, which for them would be the equivalent of us eating in the day. Now, whilst they were eating in what was their appropriate time, they did really well when it was restricted. So he basically reversed the experiment where he made these mice eat in the day, which is not their normal eating time. And from what they found, it did have some negative effects. So I can see that, like, us eating outside of... So we're diurnal.
Yes.
If we ate outside of our normal eating period, especially in excess, how we normally do in Ramadan,
how we can
I can fully see how that would mess up a lot of the mechanisms in the body to digest food, because from some of the stuff that he found, like melatonin played a huge part in your body's insulin sensitivity and your liver's ability to break down food and stuff. So really, you should be eating in the day and not eating in the night. Now, what I would...
On that, I mean, I'll let you carry on with that as well, so hold that thought. On that, cholesterol, which is the thing that eventually causes coronary heart disease or
Yeah.
heart attacks at the extreme, is actually produced during the night. So doctors would recommend with statin. I don't know how, I question how effective statins are, but to take statins, we recommend taking statins just before you go to sleep. And that's also because a lot of people have heart attacks during
The night.
that period, about 2 o'clock or so. So if you're eating a fatty fried food, which we eat at that time, it will spike it will increase the cholesterol levels, especially those low density lipoproteins, which produce which cause coronary heart disease.
Yeah. So then, if you go back to the etiquettes, or at least the sentiments of what a Muslim fast should be, it should be less food.
Yeah.
Generally, it's not that you eat to make up for what you didn't eat.
No.
It's you eat
Yeah.
like that meal. That's it. And
Yeah.
then for your suhoor, you eat something, and that's it. It's not
Yeah.
like how we do, where we're like eating to make up for what we lost.
Yeah. I think it's that kind of goes into why we are fasting. And we can go into that in a bit, because I just want to say one more thing. There's so many stuff out there about fasting, and people can go and read it, and it's everywhere nowadays, right? It's become the trend to fast. But the Muslimics were doing it for a very long time, and a lot of other civilizations as well, actually, is neurogenesis. So there's an interesting study that I read. So we all know neurons or brain cells, when they die, they just don't regenerate. That is kind of the consensus of brain cells, but obviously, there are exceptions now, and we're looking at some cells that they can, revive, or they can regenerate. So this study was looking at mice models. So they're kind of representative. Well, I can't say that, it's happening in humans, because it's happening in mice.
Yeah.
Anyway, what they found is when they went through a fasting period, they had some sort of neurogenesis, meaning regeneration of brain cells.
Wow.
So that it could help towards memory, it could help towards a lot of stuff. And when you're fasting, it's interesting because you do, and I'll this is kind of linked to the other things that I wanted to, the other kind of study that I wanted to talk about, is you feel more alert, and we kind of mentioned it last time as well in the ketone and diet episode. Feel more alert, you feel slightly you feel more happy. Things that memorization, although it's hard while you're fasting, you get better quality memorization, I think. Wouldn't you agree, Zishan, while you're fasting? He's just a hungry guy all the time.
I don't know. I think it just depends on the person. But sometimes if you're tired from not
fasting,
being able to eat, you just don't information.
You don't have the you don't have the energy. But usually with memory, the studies have shown it enhances memory. So this links to the next bit. So we produce a lot of endorphins during that period. So for people who are suffering from, depression and, anxiety, or, obviously you do need to go and find the appropriate help, whether that's medication or talking therapy or any other type of therapy, and, really speak to a professional about it. But fasting has shown that it increases endorphin levels, making the happy hormones, making you feel it makes you feel a lot better.
Do those come out like while you're fasting, or is it as a result of fasting for a while?
While you're fasting, and it takes a while for them to come out as well. It's not as soon as you
just get hungry.
I think it's more to do. So when your body is stressed, you start producing endorphins. It's like the natural painkiller of our thing. So, again, stressful situations, when you're about to get into a fight and someone punches you, you don't really feel it until afterwards. It's probably endorphins working. or
Okay.
other chemicals, adrenaline, etc. But it's not straight away. You do have to fast for a while, and then you start releasing endorphins. But it's not days. It's not that you're fasting for days, hours or something. You'll start producing endorphins.
There's another process happening in the body called autophagy,
Yes.
where cells are, to put it,
Apoptosize.
they're like sort of culling old damaged cells and
Yeah.
then renewing them. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So there's some studies coming. Some of the studies that looked at this were mainly in cancer, cancer patients.
Yeah.
So looking at immune cells. So what will happen is when you're restricting energy, the body will prioritize energy delivery to certain parts of the body.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, for example, brain is the most important part of the body. Brain will gets a lot of blood, and it will get a lot of the energy. There's other parts, the heart. You have all these organs which are vital: heart, liver, kidneys. All this stuff will get priority. There's other parts of our system which won't get priority, and one of those is actually the immune system.
Okay.
Which is, some people, well, you need your immune system. You might not need it immediately. You might need it for a disease which might come in 5 days' time or, 10 years' time.
Yeah.
So what the body will actually do is consume the immune cells, especially the defected ones,
Yeah.
to release energy from those cells.
Okay.
And essentially, your body, if you starve yourself, your body will do that with all your cells. It will start on unnecessary stuff, muscles, fat, and then you'll turn onto your muscles, and that is why people waste away if they're starving. So what the studies that was looking into that was looking at chemo. Again, be very careful with that. You don't take what the study is saying as a means of don't take it into your own hands and do this. Highly recommend that you don't do this for any patients or any people who are out there and they have had chemotherapy, because it's not a kind of a consensus. It's not a consensus within the medical profession. So what chemotherapy essentially does, it destroys cells indiscriminately, but cancer cells are more prone to destruction because they're highly developing. They're multiplying a lot quicker than any other cell. And this is why we lose our hair, and this is why we become fertile as well, because again those cells are high. They have a high turnover. They're always multiplying. So the chemotherapy can attack and destroy immune cells as well. So this study found that if chemotherapy patients were to go on to a 72-hour fast, and they'd done different kind of times, a water fast it was, that the body will destroy all the defective immune cells, and then when they start eating again, the body will start producing normal effective immune cells.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very interesting as well.
Yeah.
The other thing with cancer actually is, with fasting, the main energy source for cancer cells is glucose. They can use what's called glutamate as well, which is something else, but that's not an easy thing for cancer cells to do. They're very chaotic things. So the theory is, if you reduce the amount of glucose or sugars that you're consuming, it could potentially put the cancer cells into a stressful situation, thereby destroying the cells themselves. They will just die.
Yeah. So without prescribing it for anyone, you can
yeah.
say that there's some good studies showing that fasting has been an effective addition to combating cancer in chemotherapy.
After chemotherapy, that wasn't combating cancer. It was just for the immune cells. That is what they were looking at.
Okay.
I think this is probably more advice for people who haven't been diagnosed with with cancer, as
That's
opposed
why
to
it's like a
people,
preventative thing.
more of a preventive thing, as
Mhm.
opposed to people who have been diagnosed with cancer, because
Okay.
it could potentially be fatal if people don't go for conventional treatment.
Yeah.
And if they want to go for complementary treatment, speak to your oncologist, speak to your oncologist, and see if they recommend it, because depending on what medication you are on for your cancer, you could have interactions between the complementary therapy and the cancer therapy.
Okay.
Again, that could potentially decrease the effectiveness of the cancer therapy, and potentially it could be fatal.
Mm.
So if fasting is preventive,
Yeah.
would you say that like it should be something that's sort of like a constant in your
Yeah.
lifestyle rather than something you suddenly use as a remedy?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's it can't be suddenly be used as a remedy. As I said, it's more of a preventative thing, and it should be something that should become a lifestyle choice. Fasting, a lifestyle choice, and fasting twice a day is the way that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, our Prophet,
Twice a week.
huh?
Twice a week.
Twice a week,
Yeah.
twice a day, twice a week. Yeah, he recommended that. I think that's an amazing thing
Mm.
to do to prevent yourself from getting any type of illnesses, really.
Yeah.
Because majority of the biggest killer in the Western society is heart disease,
Mm.
and a lot of heart disease, majority of that percentage of heart disease is preventable. We could have prevented it.
Yeah. They say that it's like excess related,
Yes, yeah.
like meaning eating too much.
And Ramadan, or fasting, tries to bring about the alternative to that.
Yeah.
Reduce the amount.
I'm actually really looking forward to Ramadan.
I am too.
I know things are going to be different this year, but I don't know. I love Ramadan so much.
I think I might just starve, because I'm living away from home. I'm
Yeah.
quarantined somewhere else.
Yeah. But honestly, I think Ramadan is going to be the welcome guest for this time of year with everything that's going on. And there's a couple of like we're getting on to an hour now. There's a couple of spiritual things that we asked Sheikh Zakir to talk about a long time ago, actually, but we're gonna put it in now, and then we'll leave you with him. So we'll just say bye now and leave you with the awesome words of Sheikh Zakir.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in his book, he says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And that Allah has prescribed upon us fasting as he has prescribed on the nation that came before us, so that you may attain the maqam, the daraja, the station of taqwa, of God-fearingness. And when we think about fasting, we look at the elements of fasting for us to give us a deeper understanding and meaning when Allah says لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may be pious or may be God-fearing. And we return back and we see that there's two main elements within fasting, and that is abstinence from food and to abstain also from intimacy. And these two aspects are two of the most basic needs of human nature: the need to procreate and also the need to saturate. And ultimately, the call to us to control these two human needs by Allah Most High is almost as if it's a training for something further and greater, which is the realization of our mortality in this world and the eternity of the hereafter. So, and we know that the two of the biggest industries in the West seem to promote these two aspects. So it's as if Allah Jalla wa'ala is controlling these two basic needs of humanity. If these two, the most basic and fundamental needs of humanity, can be controlled, that means a person can bring his whole life into submission. And this is whether it's from a spiritual, religious aspect, or whether it's also from the own personal aspect of having control and having discipline over their own lives. It's for this reason when we hear the secular benefits, you could say, of fasting and abstinence from food, or at least controlling the amounts of food which a person has, it's almost as if the person regains a portion of their life in which they had lost. And this may be due to being obese, or maybe due to other illnesses that arise with overconsumption and gluttony. So it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling us to a moment of temperance, a moment of balance. And it's for this reason Imam Ghazali, the great 6th century, 5th century scholar of Islam, when he calls to this, he says, he has a famous book, or section from his famous corpus called Ihanamuddin, which is the Revivification of Religious Sciences. He says, Qasratu Shahwatain, it is breaking the two desires. The two desires he mentions, like I've said, are the call to eat and the call to procreate. And when a person has these two desires under control, he starts to reform himself. He starts to reform his soul. In fact, he starts to reform also his physical body, such that he now is in a state where he becomes the container, or the vehicle and the vessel by which he can now absorb the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the reality of what we are doing here in this dunya. So, and we look back into fasting. The nations that came before us, all the revealed books and those of others, all of that some part or some institution similar to this. And in fact, within the Bani Israel, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Maryam, when he speaks about Sayyidina Maryam alayhi salam, our light mother, Mary, peace be upon her, when Allah says, فَإِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا, when she says that I have taken an oath for my Lord that I will fast. And the fast of the people that came before us were not just abstaining from food and from the procreating call, but rather was also a call not to take part in conversation, in speech. However, our Sharia, our law slightly differs from this, in that the call to speech has been waived. A person continues to speak, although they should not speak greater than what is the need. And this brings us on to another element of fasting. I have mentioned only the compulsory elements of fasting, or the base elements of fasting, but scholars have mentioned that fasting is such by which a person continues to traverse and continues to purify his soul. Because a person who cannot have his most base desires at control cannot purify their soul. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions when he says, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي اتَّخَذَ هَوَاهُ إِلَهًا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, have you seen those who have taken their desires as a God other than Allah, the Most High? Meaning that when a person is a slave to his lower self, to his desires, to his impulses, to his gratifying his most basic and most lower base human needs, he is not in fact in a state of freedom, but he is in fact in a state of slavery, to himself, a state of slavery to his lower self, by which his whole life can take a direction which he does not wish his life to take. And this we see many people who have become sober, so to say, after living a life of debauchery, when they return back to a life of normality, or a life of balance. This actually liberates them, rather than actually causing them to be enslaved to their lower passions and their lower desires. The Prophet, peace be upon him, used to perform something like Siyam al-Wisal, which was continuous fasting. And that is, the Prophet, peace be upon him, he mentioned, I am not a man like any other of you. And that when the period of iftar, or the evening, came, and it's time for now to commence eating and to break the fast, so to say, the Prophet would continue. In fact, he would continue for many days, sometimes continue for almost 7 days continuously without break. And this was the spiritual strength of the Prophet, which Allah had bestowed specifically on him. And this was impermissible for any of the other companions. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Inna Allah yusqini wa yut'imuni." Allah waters me and also feeds me. So this was specific to the Prophet. And we hear of some of the companions who, due to poverty in the initial era, so much hunger used to overcome them that they used to hold their stomachs out of pangs of hunger. And some of them mentioned by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah that he would lie on the ground out of these pangs of hunger that would overtake him. So the fasting which is prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has great benefits. And from those benefits, we see how some of the companions, when they would only eat for a short amount of time. Even their food would be very, very meager, but yet they were the same people who used to go out in great expeditions, and they would be out for expeditions for months, sometimes on the end, only living on a certain meager meals which would sometimes not exceed a couple of days per day. This shows that the capacity of the body to reform itself, and shows the capacity of the body to nourish itself on meager means. I remember myself when I was on a journey by road from England to Mauritania, and we went through England, over the channel into France, from France into Spain, and then from Spain ferry across into Morocco, then Morocco into Mauritania. And this journey took about 6 days. And I remember this was when I was quite young and a little immature, alhamdulillah. And during that journey, the only thing I used to eat was olives and figs. And if I think back to that time, I remember having a heightened degree of alertness to what was happening around me. And I also remember being very, very focused on, also when I used to memorize very, very fast. Also, studying certain elements as I was doing, I was passing through this journey. Also, it was very, very heightened, you could say. And this physically, proved to me, first of all, the capacity to which we can survive. Not only survive, but in fact be nourished at such a meager amount of food. And also, what they taught me was to look internally and to introspection, to think about the waste sometimes, or the amount of food that we sometimes consume. And then we ponder that in fact Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ability to survive on a less than we actually consume presently. When we finally got to Mauritania, we didn't have a feast. We had the simple food, which I think they used to have, was rice poured with crushed peanuts. That was sort of the staple diets which they have. And I was shocked at the amount that people used to eat. What we eat today here, for example, which we think is enough for 2 people or a person, that would be enough for 8 or maybe even 12. And I remember when the rice and the food used to be placed in the mahdara of Sheikh Muhammad al-Abdud, Rahil, passed away now. When they used to come with the food, and we had students from all over Africa that were present there. The food used to come, and people used to take about 4 bites, 4 luqmas, you could say, 4 morsels, 4 or 5, and that's it. That was the meal for the morning, and then we have a similar one for the evening. And mashallah, everybody was fully quenched and also well fed and well nourished. And this goes to show that fasting is the ability for us to be in a capacity to which we can survive, not only survive, but in fact be well nourished on meager means.